So I'm going to get started immediately. So I think today's topic is exciting because I think the digital space is a space that continuously keeps evolving. It starts, changing every now and then, and that's really why we try and track the trends and sort of predict what's going to really happen this year. And I always start off with this, with this image of Vatican City when the Pope actually passed away in 2005, and this is what it really looked like back then, 15 years ago. And if you fast forward it to 2013, when the new Pope was brought in, this is what it looked like. And for me, these two images, are a powerful representation of how digital and mobile has evolved over the last few years. And you can imagine what's going to happen in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, right? And I think that's really the power of mobile and technology that's really going to change everything that we see around us. And we at the moment we have about 1.4 billion people in the country, and about 1.2 billion mobile subscribers are there. But when you look at the number of unique users that are actually there, as per the Indian Mobile Association, actually, it's only about 1/3 of the country, which is about 500 odd million users or 50 crore users, which essentially means that over the next 10-15 years, almost 1 billion people will get access to the internet across the board, and that's what makes all of this exciting as well. And I think even though there are a lot of mobile subscribers, the internet subscription is not as much, but that's going to change as well as more and more cities, villages, towns get better access to internet, get 4G and eventually 5G as well. And that's really when we're going to see the internet really reach its saturation. At this point, only about 30% of the country has access to the internet. And if you look at even, where does the internet get consumed today? It's actually almost 97% on mobile, right? And actually, when you look at Facebook as a platform, that gives you a clear representation of that. Even though Facebook has always been on desktop and mobile, today 97% of that is actually being used on the mobile device, and that's representative actually of any key digital channel that exists out there. And of course, we are seeing a lot of things changing. Video is going through the roof in terms of consumption. We are seeing a lot of growth when it comes to searches around education, around lifestyle, around business. We're seeing a lot of things change, and that's really why digital is an exciting space to be. And I think many of you are aspiring folks who want to be in the digital space. Definitely, there's lots that's going to happen in the next few years in the digital space. And one of the key things to keep in mind is that a lot of the growth that we're seeing in digital is actually coming from smaller towns and non-metro cities. And this slide really represents all of that in terms of the fact that Bharat is where that digital adoption is happening. Because if you look at bigger cities and metros, the penetration of internet and digital is already very high. But the penetration is going to get much bigger and better as it goes along. I just got a message saying no audio video. Can I get a quick comment from people who are able to see me? Is the presentation visible? Can someone confirm? Or? Just a second. So seems like it's working, so we'll continue. So we're going to quickly deep dive into the top digital trends and what do we predict. So there are 8 trends that we predict for 2020 that we really want to talk about today. So the very first trend is in terms of the rise of new social media platforms. And obviously, we've seen the existing platforms of Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat already exist, but we're seeing a lot more that's coming into play. This is currently, some of the larger platforms that exist, and along with the user base. Those WhatsApp is not technically a social media platform. That's probably the one app that has a lot more users. And of course, then you have Facebook, then you have TikTok, you have YouTube, and even the smaller ones like Instagram and LinkedIn as well. But in terms of usage, obviously Instagram, for example, has a much higher usage, even though they have much smaller user base at their end. And we are seeing a lot more newer platforms. I mean, these are just 6 logos that you see here, but there are a lot other platforms as well coming through. And we are seeing a lot of them are trying to do very interesting work. And interestingly, many of them are video first, right? Be it TikTok, be it Bigo, be it Bigo. All of them are video first platforms. And we are seeing a lot of new things that are happening here. And I'll share a bit as we go along in terms of case studies of these things. So I'm going to play you a quick video of one of our campaigns. So this was a unique campaign that was actually done on TikTok, where the intent really was to engage with all of the delivery partners that Swiggy has. So Swiggy has about 2 lakh delivery partners, and the intent really was to engage with them on TikTok. And when we actually surveyed these delivery partners, we realized that they're not on Facebook, they're not on Instagram. They actually spend a lot of time on YouTube, and they spend a lot of time on TikTok, and that's really where we ran this campaign, and we were able to get 90 million organic views, which is again something that's hard to get in other platforms today, where the organic reach has considerably dropped. But many of these newer social media platforms are actually able to give you a lot more organic reach, which is why some of this actually starts making more sense as well. And as we talk about TikTok, I think TikTok is one of the platforms that's grown much faster than the others that I showed in the slide. TikTok is the one that really sort of broke away and created a new category of content and a new category of content creators as well. And India is the #1 platform for TikTok now, and I think that's continuing to grow and scale as we go along. And we are actually seeing how multiple brands can actually leverage TikTok as a platform. And while we're talking about social media platforms, there are also other newer platforms that are emerging when it comes to customer acquisition as well. Be it the OTT and video channels like Hotstar, Voot, and many others that you know about. You also have large platforms like Times Internet, Daily Hunt. We're also seeing Truecaller that's opened up its advertising via programmatic. Of course, we have Flipkart, Amazon. We also have a lot of unique niche players like Kardeko or Yahoo, or even language-specific players like Dainik Bhaskar or Dinamalar or Amar Urjala, who are specific to a language or to a region, and they have a very large presence online as well. And we're seeing, consumers are obviously spending a lot of time on social media platforms, but they're also spending a lot of time on many of these platforms that you see here, which are either publications or content platforms or e-commerce platforms. And you can actually reach out to your consumers across any of these broader spectrums that you can think of. The second trend that we're really seeing is in terms of voice and chatbots, and how that's actually driving not just conversations, but actually also driving e-commerce and business itself. And chatbots have obviously been around for a long time. I think chatbots came into play maybe 2.5 years ago, and we're seeing a lot of traction from their side. But one thing that's really made that change happen is the WhatsApp chatbots. Facebook already had the messenger chatbots for a long time, for almost 3 years now. But the WhatsApp chatbots that started getting rolled out in 2019 has really started picking pace. And this is a small example of how Flipkart leveraged it for their Big Billion Day sale. But we are now starting to do this even at smaller scales. Even if you have, smaller user bases or smaller customer databases, or if you really have even a small business, you can today leverage WhatsApp to have chatbot conversations where you don't need to actively be on it to converse. The chatbot can actually handle almost 90% of that conversation, and then somebody else can take care of the balance 10%. But we are seeing a lot of traction coming in from WhatsApp chatbots, both in terms of lead generation and inquiries, and also in terms of engagement and actually engage and continue engaging with users on WhatsApp. The other trend, which is connected to chatbots, is the fact that we're seeing a lot of surge in voice searches. In fact, almost 28% of all searches on Google, even as of the Indian market, is actually done through voice, which is why we call voice as a new touch, because when the iPhone was launched in the mid 2000s, it changed the way we looked at phones because of that touch functionality. It transformed how we looked at devices and mobile phones. And that's really what voice is doing today, because with voice, you can now start talking to your smart assistant, you can start talking to your television remote, you can start talking to your car, you can start talking to your refrigerator. So you are in some sense conversing and interacting with technology without a screen, and not necessarily a screen is there all the time. And that changes a lot of things, because look at the way consumers behave. There is going to be a huge change in the way they interact with devices and technology. And of course, Google has given out some data in terms of what is this being used for, right? So it is being used for different purposes. It could be cooking, it could be exercising, it could be while you're watching a television and you use it for a remote or other assistant. There are various usages that we are trying to kind of see and patterns that we can see. But there's a lot more that we need to still understand about the space, because Google doesn't really have a lot of analytics around the space, and neither does Amazon. And we really need to see the data that Amazon Echo or Google or others have that can help us as marketers and brands to leverage voice a lot more. And even Amazon Echo is actually growing a lot. Amazon has their voice assistant, which is inbuilt into the remotes as well as the standalone devices. And obviously people are using it to play music and set timers, but I think there are going to be more advanced usages for this, be it in terms of reading news, be it in terms of shopping itself and adding items to the shopping list. And I think there's a lot more that we are expecting to see around the voice devices as we go along. We also have Social Beats YouTube channel, which has a lot of informative content. I think one of them is around voice commerce. So feel free to check that out later when you'd like. The third trend that we are looking at going forward is vernacular. And while vernacular on digital has been around sporadically for the last few years, we're really seeing a surge happening in the late 2000s and definitely 2020 as well, where we're seeing how vernacular can really drive brands to connect with consumers and connect with consumers in every part of the country in the language that they love to speak in. And this is data that Google along with Nielsen actually put down together. By next year, which is 2021, the number of language internet speakers will actually be 2.5 times the English speakers. And English speaking users are not going to be growing much because all of them are already online. But a lot of the language speakers are going to get online for the very first time. And that's also why they use voice, because they're not used to typing on keyboards, right? They just want to speak it out. And that's why voice is also growing along with the language. And at the moment, at least, there are about 234 million language speakers, which is almost 23 crore users. And there's much higher search happening on language than on English. And Google is slowly starting to roll out, advertising that you can do in multiple languages. It's already available in beta, but I think it's not fully scaled up where everybody can use it. but that's definitely going to happen in the coming in 2020 and 21. And as the last point says, 9 out of every 10 new users that will come online will actually be a language user. That means they prefer to speak and consume content in a language other than English. While they may know English, they want to consume content in a different language. And that's really what is critical to keep in mind for anyone who's in the marketing space on digital today. And it's not just Hindi, right? I mean, and often we may think that Hindi is our national language, and that's why that might be an obvious first choice. But there's a lot of growth that's coming in from Telugu, Tamil, Bengali, Marathi, Assamese, Gujarati, and a few others. And I think there's a lot that we can do as brands and marketeers to make that happen. But of course, Hindi is pretty large, as you can see from this chart. But there are a lot of other languages as well that are growing. And I think that's something that brands are starting to leverage across the spectrum. And often it's not just about translating content into those languages. We also try and see how we can actually localize it, right? Because even this campaign, if some of you know Hindi, it says "Milega much more," and it says that in Hindi, right? It's not that you have to translate "Milega much more" in Hindi, but it's actually about how do you localize it to make sure that you can actually get better results from that. And that's what we try and do for many of the brands that we work with. And Khadims, which is a footwear retail store, we actually use language and multiple language. We actually used about 6 different languages to really drive better results for them across their store visit ads. This is another video of a campaign for one of our app clients. We'll go through the video and then I'll explain it. Right. So this is this is one of our largest clients, Khata Book, where we actually look at how do you drive better results in terms of using language and driving app installs, app usage, also getting existing app users to actually use the app more effectively. And across the board, we've seen language really works well. And this is, of course, one way to use it, where you can use it to drive more app installs, app usage, and app engagement as well. And we're seeing a lot of different websites actually trying to leverage, multilingual. For example, Your Story, which is a publication, online publication around startups and funding. They have so many different languages where they have content, right from Kannada to Hindi to Assamese to Bangla to Gujarati, Odia, Punjabi, right? So they're trying to cater to different kinds of users in India who speak different languages, and that's really what makes them far more successful than many other online publications that are only in English or only in one language. The fourth trend that we are seeing is virtual reality and augmented reality. We are quite bullish about augmented reality. We are seeing it pick up really fast, whereas virtual reality is something that's going to take a bit more time, but it is picking up momentum as well. And we'll talk a bit about both of these trends that we are seeing. So when the internet actually started off, it was actually very text heavy, right? It was all about Google search. It was all about websites. It was all about written text. Eventually, then we got photographs, we got Facebook on board, then we got videos, we got YouTube, and the next trend is obviously looking at how do you look at VR and AR and actually merging these realities with your own reality as well. We are seeing obviously, industries like foods, travel, real estate, and beauty actually take a lead when it comes to augmented reality. For example, this is an app which allows you to actually put furniture in your own room and see how it would look like if you purchased it, right? So it actually allows you to use augmented reality to see what the product would look like. And there are various other use cases. A lot of beauty brands using it to allow people to do their lip color, do their hair color. There are eyewear brands looking at how do sunglasses and eyewear actually look on your face. There are various use cases that we are seeing on AR that are really picking up quite rapidly. We also have again videos on AR on our channel. Feel free to check them out at some point. VR, on the other hand, like I was saying, is a bit slow when it comes to pickup, but I'll show you something quick around that that'll give you a quick sense of what's happening around VR. So this is Facebook Spaces that they launched some time ago, and it's been live for the last year and a half. And it works really well with the Oculus Rift that you can buy. But the challenge is obviously, this reality and the technology already exists, but do people want to use it is the first question. And second is, how expensive is that technology for everyone to really have it? So today, the Oculus Rift, which was shown in this video, that costs upwards of 25,000. In fact, I think the high-end version goes up to as much as I think 60,000 rupees. So it really is a matter of time when some of these devices become a lot more accessible and a lot more user-friendly in terms of what they can be used for. And that's really when the usage of these will pick up. So VR is interesting. There's a lot that could happen there, and the technology already exists, but it doesn't have enough scale and enough users to be on it for it to really matter at this point. But it will probably change in our view in 2021. The fifth trend that we're really seeing is in terms of leveraging first-party data and using artificial intelligence to leverage that first-party data. And we'll talk a bit about that in terms of first understanding what is first-party data. I found this great, image from Lotame, which is a data aggregator, which explains this. So first-party data is nothing but data that you have, data that your brand has, data that you as a company have. It could be your own customer, it could be, email IDs and phone numbers of people that have interacted with you either through your events or webinars like these. And that's really the first party data. The second party data is data that you get from someone you have a partnership with. Let's say, there's a retail company that has a partnership with a payment company. You could get data from there, or you could actually buy data from specific sources that sell that data, like Just Style or others. And the third party data is nothing but an aggregation of all of these where data is merged with other data points to bring together more powerful data. And we use programmatic platforms like Google and Adobe to actually buy this third-party data. But first-party data is what's really, really important. And the reason why it's really important is most likely that's the most high-quality data that you have. But in terms of reach and scale, obviously first-party data is small. It's only dependent on how many customers you have or how many people you've reached. But I think if you can find a way to scale the first-party data to be big enough, then that's really what can make this happen. And if you look at really how can you use AI for this, you can use AI to actually target better users. If you know a little bit about Facebook, the entire Facebook custom audience feature that's there, a lot of it is dependent on how much quality first party data that you can give it, right? If you can give enough data of number of the kind of users that come to your website, or the kind of users who buy on your website, or the kind of people who walk into your store, or the people who are loyal customers of yours, if you can give that first party data to a Facebook or a Google or a TikTok, then you can actually do much, much better targeting using the AI of these platforms. And of course, there are multiple users that you can use it for, but I think using it for better targeting and finding better audiences, those are the top two reasons to really use first party data and AI to scale up your marketing campaigns and digital campaigns. And because there's also a lot of data that's today not with us, for example, data from Google Assistant or others, if there is going to be a way in the future where this data is going to be merged with third-party data platforms on programmatic, and you can actually combine that with your first-party data. And what I mean by that is, for example, today you can marry your first-party data. Let's say you have 5 lakh customers. You can actually see how many of those 5 lakh customers on digital today have access to, let's say, Netflix. And you can actually find a merger of these two data points and go after those users with a specific offering that you may have. And that's really the power of merging first-party data with third-party data. The sixth trend, which is probably an obvious one, is that video is growing, and it is going to be here for a while, and it's only going to grow much more from here on. And almost 85% of all internet users today actually use YouTube, and we are seeing a lot more growth from other platforms as well. But YouTube is still the #1 platform when it comes to the entire video space. And YouTube alone has the reach of 265 million users. In fact, when you do the YouTube masthead, which is what you see on the left-hand side screenshot here, your incremental reach is phenomenal. You actually reach, you almost get about 900 million impressions on YouTube in a single day today in India alone. And that's really the power of the platform. And in some ways, it is the platform that can deliver the reach to you that no other platform on the internet today can. And of course, you have a lot of OTT or video platforms today. Hotstar obviously leads many of these platforms, and MX Player is at second, and then you have Amazon and Netflix and others as well. ZEE5, Sony Live, Vood, many others are coming into the play, but Hotstar still leads that pack by a large margin, also because they started off much earlier than the others. You cannot advertise today on Netflix or Amazon Prime, but I think it's only a matter of time when that would possibly be available as well. And it's not just metros again that are watching the videos, right? And I think it carries on from the trend we were talking about earlier as well, that this is happening actually across non-metro as well. And in fact, in 2019, the non-metro consumption has actually grown much faster than the metro consumption. And we're seeing that happen because a lot more language content is available today on these platforms. So we obviously have a lot of video campaigns, and you can see many brands doing interesting work. This is one of the video campaigns that we did to really engage with users, where we used humor to really engage with all of them. I'll show you a few more campaigns, which might give you a sense of the kind of different ways you can use these videos. This one is obviously a bit more towards the product, where you say, hey, I have an interesting product and I want to communicate it in a different way. And this campaign actually worked out really well for them, where we delivered almost 3,300 new investors for them. And we had multiple different videos, in fact, for different audiences as well. One which was focused towards people who use food apps and Swiggy and Zomato, one which was towards students. So there are different category of people that we went after. So this was a campaign that was not meant to drive, any sale or any specific product, but actually help engage the brand with users and engage them in a more meaningful manner. And that's why the campaign is called Dear Wine Hold the Pan. So there are different ways to use video and video content to either build a brand, acquire customers, or even engage with them, as we saw in Wonderchef's case. So one of the reasons why I showed this video is there is a lot of attention span that's dwindling across platforms. If you look at Instagram or you look at Facebook, the amount of time a user spends there is very less, and they're always scrolling or always looking at stories. And that's why Facebook actually ideated and came with a new format called thumb stoppers, which are nothing but 10 to 12-second videos which are vertically short. They're not the regular YouTube size, but actually the story size. So this actually fits in very well with Instagram stories or Facebook stories. And these are videos that actually are much shorter, much crisper, and they only have a single message which comes across in the entire video. And this was our first attempt. We're looking at how we can get better at this format, but I think the thumb stopper format is a format that we're really seeing a lot of interesting work being done across by different brands. Because it can get you much better retention. So to give you an example, we took one of the regular videos, which was the YouTube size videos, which was much longer, 30-second videos, and we used them on Instagram vis-a-vis this video, which you just saw. And the difference was phenomenal, right? The average view time for the other video, which is the 30-second video, was actually about 3 seconds. Whereas the one we just saw, the average view time there was almost 9 seconds. So there's a huge difference in the amount of time and engagement that users are giving to this kind of a video. Also because the format is different, the message is more clear and far more crisper as well. The seventh trend that we are seeing is stronger offline to online attribution, where, if it's in the earlier days, if it was an e-commerce brand or if it's a real estate brand, very easy to take the lead and then follow them through or track how many people actually bought online. But today that's gone one step further, and we'll see how that's working. And data and attribution obviously very, very key to anything you do digital, right? And for those who are on LinkedIn, LinkedIn actually has free data that you can get if you have a company page, where you can actually understand who your company followers are. You can also understand for free what are your website visitors like, which industry they work in, what designation do they have, and a lot of this powerful data. And all of this data is actually free. It's available on LinkedIn for free if you have a company page. And data is really very important because Google has used this data so powerfully and allowed brands to leverage that. And almost 90% of people today buying something are either searching for it on Google or searching for it on Amazon or Flipkart or other products, right? So that search and discovery is very, very important. And often attribution becomes complex when you have multiple touch points, right? Be it search, be it social, be it a website, be it Hotstar, be it so many other channels that we use today. Attributing which channel is working better is always a very tough task for anyone in the marketing or digital space. But there are multiple attribution models that today that are available, and that's how we try and understand that. But one of the key trends we really wanted to highlight today was the fact that offline retail is still very important. People are still buying things offline, and almost 90% of commerce that happens in India still happens offline. And that's really why Google actually launched what is called the store visits methodology, where based on their GPS data and Google Maps data, Google actually knows whether you walked into a specific store. They know whether you've gone in, for example, to a Titan store. They know, for example, you've gone in to dine at the kebab factory. So they know exactly where you are at every point, and that data is then fed back into advertisers and brands, and that becomes very powerful data. So today we can actually track someone who watches my YouTube video or someone who sees my display ad on a publication. I can actually understand how many of those walked into the store. What were the number of users that walked in at any point to the store? And that makes tracking and attribution very, very powerful. I'm going to show you a quick case study of one of our brands, Malabar, as well, where we've done a lot of this work too. And because it's on digital, you can actually speak to a few people that are really mattering to you as a brand and get them to buy. Because when you look at other mediums like print or television, you are talking to so many people, but you get only few people to come to your store. So on digital, if you can target the right people in your location, and it could be, let's say, a 3-kilometer radius or a 5-kilometer radius from your retail store, then that fundamentally changes how digital works and how powerful it can be for a brand in the retail segment. So the offline tracking and store visit tracking is something that's really, really powerful. We've been using it for about a year now. It is still an alpha and beta product for Google, so you do have to get it whitelisted for your brand. But it is possible to do it, and I think that it is something that a lot of retail stores are starting to finally sort of leverage and use. So which brings us to the last trend that we have, which is influencer marketing. Influencer marketing is going to continue to be impactful in 2020, but it will have some challenges, and we'll quickly talk about some of them as well. And influencer marketing is very, very powerful because it's essentially word of mouth, but on the digital medium. And it is one of the key components of any brand campaign or any campaign which drives awareness. And obviously, Instagram is the top platform that continues to be there, and Twitter and Facebook as well. One platform that's not mentioned here, but I think has been really, really large in the last 6 to 9 months in India is TikTok. And we're seeing a lot of influencer marketing that's happening across TikTok. And there are a lot more exciting things to expect from there as well in 2020. And over the last few years, we've seen it being used in multiple ways, be it, Taco Bell using Tanmay Bhatt from AIB for it, or even when Reliance Jio was launched, or even when a new brand is launching something like Axis Bank was launching something different, they wanted influencers. There's a lot of things that brands are doing on the influencer marketing side. But what's going to change is that one is the policies. Sorry. There are a lot of going to be different policies that are going to come into play. One is the Advertising Standards Council of India, and we are seeing that they are going to come with a more stringent policy where influencers need to declare that they are part of an influencer campaign. And we are seeing that a lot of things that will change because of that. The second change is, of course, platforms are also evolving, right? So be it Instagram, where they're removing the like count, or be it TikTok, where TikTok itself is incentivizing content creators and influencers to be on the platform. There's a lot of fundamental changes that are happening on the platforms that will change the way influencer marketing is done, but it still continues to be a key component for most brands to continue leveraging. So, and of course, TikTok, like I was saying, has created a new breed of content creators and influencers who did not exist earlier. And all of these folks are creating content on their mobile phones and high quality content, but doing it much, much faster than content creators did on YouTube or Instagram as well. So that brings us to the last slide. I think these are the 8 trends that we really see, coming out of everything that we are talking about in 2020. There's a lot more that we could talk about in this session, but unfortunately, because of time, I'm going to sort of pause here and take a few questions